A guy swaggers in to visit his doctor. The doctor says, I've got some bad news and I've got some very bad news. The guy says, oh my God. He said, what's the bad news? Doctor says, the bad news is your lab results came back and you only have 24 hours to live. The guy says, oh my God, that's terrible. What could possibly be worse than that? The doctor says, I forgot to tell you yesterday. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. When I began to research this speech, I Googled the phrase humor and healing. In 0.23 seconds, it came back with 4,530,000 hits. Now, that was good news and that was bad news. The good news was, in terms of my theory that humor had healing power and was good for you, it was probably going to be correct. The bad news was, with 4.5 million hits, where do I even begin? Now, unless you've been living under a very large rock, you probably heard by now that humor is good for you in some way, form, or fashion. This is not a new concept at all. As a matter of fact, Proverbs 17:22 states that a merry heart doeth like good medicine. As I researched this topic, there's probably nobody who did more to advance the concept of humor as medicine than Norman Cousins. Norman Cousins was an author. He was a political activist. He was a professor at UCA School of Medicine, but he was most remembered as the editor for the Saturday Review, which he did for over 20 years. After Norman Cousins was diagnosed with a rare, incurable form of arthritis, he decided to write a book entitled Anatomy of an Illness that talked about how he dealt with his dis-ease. Once the doctors gave him a terminal diagnosis, he had no option. So he decided to implement his own treatment program. He checked himself out of the hospital and he went on a regimented diet of vitamin C, faith, hope, love, positive attitude, and laughter. Laughter which he got by watching old Candid Camera and Marx Brothers films. Norman Cousins discovered in his experiment that watching 20 minutes of film, Marx Brothers film, gave him 2 hours of pain-free sleep. After the pain wore off, he watched more films and he'd get more sleep. Once his book was published in 1979, it literally opened up the floodgates of research on the healing power of humor, to whereas now it's a commonly accepted and scientifically documented fact that humor has healing powers. So, how does humor help us? I'll give you just 3 quick ways. One of the ways is that it helps to reduce pain. When we laugh and we have a good belly laugh, our bodies actually produce a hormone called endorphins, right? Endorphins. It's a pain-killing hormone. And this is what Norman Cousins discovered. So the more we laugh, more hormones we produce. Also, it strengthens the immune system. A good belly laughter, good deep down laughter, increases production of something called T cells. And T cells, of course, help us ward off disease. And thirdly and finally, it decreases stress. When we're under stress, our bodies produce a hormone called cortisol. It's been documented and scientifically proven that laughter reduces our cortisol levels. So you say, okay, yeah, all that scientific medical mumbo jumbo, that sounds fine, but how can I increase and put some humor into my own life? Well, I'm glad you asked, because me being a PhD, professional humorologist from Detroit, I want to share with you just a couple of things that have worked for me personally. Now, one is learn to tell a joke. Please. When you learn to tell a joke, you have the whole world at your hand. Everybody loves to laugh. Number 2 is practice your humor in Toastmaster. You can use the Humorously Speaking Manual and Entertaining Speaker Manual to practice your humor. Number 3, build yourself a humor library. Collect and read books on humor and jokes. And 4th, and my favorite, is to learn to find the funny in everyday situations. It helps me get through a lot of tough times. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't end a speech on the healing power of humor without a good joke. As a matter of fact, this is not only a good joke, this is the world's funniest joke. In October 2002, and I'm not making this up, a British psychologist by the name of Robert Wiseman completed a year-long study where he researched the funniest joke. He got over 40,000 jokes from all over the world, all different nations, nationalities. Folks sent them in. He asked them to register on his Laugh Lab website. They registered the joke, 40,000 jokes, and he had them to vote on the jokes using a giggleometer, which was a 5-point scale from not very funny to very funny. This is the results of that study. 2 guys are out hunting in the woods. One of the guys drops unconscious. He doesn't appear to be breathing. His eyes are glazed over. His other guy panics. He whips out the cell phone and he calls 911. My friend is dead. What should I do? The operator says, well, calm down. First, we got to make sure he's dead. There's a silence. A gunshot is heard. The guy returns to the phone. Okay, now what? That joke was proven to be funny over all nationalities, young, old, black, white. It was literally the world's famous joke. And what they discovered in that study is that even though senses of humor differ from all different nationalities, the one thing that we all enjoy is that we all love to laugh. So live, love, laugh, and be happy. Life is too short to be unhappy. Madam Toastmaster.